Welcome back to Strong Hands Reborn Dad. My name is Odie. I am a male reborn doll collector focusing on the mental health benefits of collecting reborn dolls and also normalizing men within the hobby. And I've been doing this now for about 6 months or so. And I'm so excited to have you guys along here for the ride. If you're new here, please consider giving us a like, subscribe, and follow us. And be sure to share this video with all of your friends, because I'm finding new people every single week who are like, "You're a reborn dad. I didn't know that there were very many of you out there." And I'm just so happy to have all the new people joining. And so thank you so very much. And so this week we're going to be talking all about part 2 of buying your first custom reborn doll. If you missed part 1, I'll have it linked in the card above. So be sure and go and check that out over there. And with that, let's get into it. Okay, so we're back. So you've done your research. You've contacted the artist. You guys have made a plan, and you've got your payment. Maybe you paid for it all up at once. Maybe you're doing installments. Whatever the case may be, you've got your order in, and you and the artist have now worked out how this is going to go and have a plan for getting your new custom reborn doll. So that's where we're going to pick up today, where we're going to say, now what? A lot of waiting, but we're going to give you some more details into that. Before I go any further, I always like highlighting one of my reborn dolls. This is not a custom, but this is Penny. She was made by Kari Compton with Bitty Bunny Reborn Nursery. You can find her on Facebook. She is a true darling. I love this little girl. She is absolutely beautiful. I've had her for about 5 months, I think now. And I can't go into a room without just absolutely smiling when I see her face. I just changed her outfit. I got some photos online. For those with a visual impairment or difficulty seeing, you can go to stronghandsrebordad.com/penny, and you can look at all the pictures and see the description and get all the details. In fact, all of my reborn dolls are listed there in the collection section of the Strong Hands Reborn Dad website. Please feel free to go and give that a check. So let's get into today's video, and we've got several really important things to talk about. So the first thing that we're going to go over, and I've got my notes, so I came prepared. First thing we're going to talk about is what happens after paying the deposit. All right, so let's assume in this case that you've got a partial payment. You put the down payment down. Some artists work like this. Some require all the money up front. It's very dependent upon the artist. So there's not really a one-size thing here fits all. Some do payment plans, some don't. It's getting rarer, I think, to find an artist who does payment plans. A lot of the ones that I've been experiencing require the full payment up front. And customs, as I mentioned in the previous video, are naturally more expensive. So you've made the big investment, and you're quickly finding out now that the deposit's been made. The artist has confirmed that they've received either the full payment or the deposit, and you're thinking, your mind wants this to be like Amazon in 3-hour delivery or 1-day delivery, but you're going to find out it takes a lot longer than that to make a truly custom reborn doll. And I also want to mention that there are plenty of scam websites out there that say things like, after your order's placed, our artist will hand paint your doll. And then they say something like 3 days. And then, especially if you see it coming out of China, no, that's not a custom. I fell for it. If it makes you feel any better, no, that is not a custom reborn. That is a manufactured, and it could even be a stolen sculpt. Beware of that. If they say like 3 days to do it, no, you're not getting a custom reborn in 3 days. That's never going to happen. The next thing is, at this point, you've already decided on the sculpt. This is where it gets a little muddy, because some artists, you can provide them the sculpt, like maybe you purchased it, but then you ship it to them, or you bought it directly from the like McPherson's or something like that, and you're going to have it shipped directly to the artist's address. Sometimes they'll work that out with you. Maybe you've got the hair, anything like that. But the first thing that's going to happen after that payment is received and the artist confirms it, is they're going to get the materials together. Whatever sculpt it is, the supplies they may need, if there's a certain skin tone, that's where the artist is going to start at. They're going to get everything they need in order to start the organization process. Now, this can take a few days, it can take several weeks. It depends on what you ordered, how hard it is to get it to there. In my case, when I ordered Sarah, it had to go from Canada clear to Florida. It actually took only a few days, like it was less than a week from the time I paid her to the time she got it in the mail. It was a week, and that was going from Canada. I can't promise it'll be that quick, but that's usually probably what's going to happen. If the artist happens to have the blank sculpt and you agreed that's the one you want, obviously then you don't have this delay. So there's a lot of moving parts. The biggest thing here is communication. A good artist should have no problem returning emails within a timely manner. Give it 24, 48 hours or working business hours, especially if you've hired a professional artist. And if you're doing this with somebody who is doing this on the side, they should be open with you about that. Yeah, I'm doing this on the side. I work a day job, or maybe I have some limitations with family or disability or something that makes it harder for me to work on these dolls long periods of time. They need to be communicated with it. But that does not give the artist an excuse to drag it out. If they tell you 3 months, 3 months should be a reasonable expectation unless there is something very legitimate that comes up. I think any good artist should be able to communicate this timeline to you very clearly and set clear expectations, especially any good professional artist. Now, some newer artists may underestimate their ability. They maybe make a mistake along the way and they may send you email. I'm so sorry, I made a boo-boo on this baby and I'm gonna fix it, that kind of thing. Or, what can I do to make this right if it's not fixable? I can see situations like that. The key here is communication, openness, and responsiveness. I can't give you every scenario that could come up, but this is some of the common things that may happen. So now you've made your deposit and the artist is getting supplies ready. So that goes into the next part. How long is the waiting process and how long can it actually take? Well, that depends on the sculpt. If it's a vinyl sculpt, a smaller baby, maybe a little less time, depending on the artist. If it's a full body silicone that's 20 plus inches, it could be 3, 4, 5, even 6 months. I've seen in some cases. It's all dependent on the complexity that you ordered and the complexity that you and the artist agreed to. For instance, you can order a custom without hair rooting. Maybe you want a bald baby. That's totally fine. That means that it should take less time because there's no time now for hair rooting. In my case, there was actually a separate artist who did the hair rooting for Sarah. And that meant that then Sarah, once she was mostly done and painted and varnished and all of that, the head got shipped to Michigan, which is where the other artist was who did the hair rooting for Sarah. So there's multiple artists involved in mine. And so we had planned on about 3 months, but in my case, it actually was closer to 4 months before I got Sarah delivered. But there were other factors in my case, weather. And then after the doll's hair was rooted, there was a big storm and it knocked out. And the hair rooting artist lives in a remote kind of area, wooded area, and a tree was completely blocking their path. So they couldn't do it. I remember a snowstorm kind of impacting part of it too. So there were some shipping delays and access delays, but they were very communicative. In fact, they even sent me pictures to show me. And so that was really good of both of them to communicate with me. I never once felt like I wasn't getting a good response back within a reasonable amount of time from the artists that I was working with. And again, we're talking about Sarah, who at the end of the day was 1,875. I call her my $2,000 baby. It's just catchier to say. But anyway, so it can really depend, but I keep harping on this. It's all about communication. So, when to expect progress photos? I think in a lot of cases, the photos should follow a kind of a set timeline. I think that a good artist, and these can be done on request too. In my case, I actually didn't want to see photos. I saw the photo of the blank kit while it was in the bag. I saw an example photo of the hair color and the example style of hair rooting that I was looking for because I didn't want a super thick set of hair, but I didn't want it kind of balding either. And so we kind of had to settle on this medium. And luckily enough, both artists and the rooting artist had good pictures that they were able to provide me. I said, yes, I like that look better and that style better. And so we went off that. So we had the hair color and all that, but I specifically in my case wanted to be more surprised because I knew I was going to do a box opening. And if I knew what the doll was going to look like, I felt like that was going to ruin it for me and ruin my initial reaction on camera. And I was glad I did that because the thing is, in this case, I trusted the artist, both of them, and I knew that they were going to do a good job. I gave them my list. I showed you guys that in the last video of what I was looking for, kind of an overview of it. And so that was kind of how we went with it in that regard. So, but you can ask for more or less photos based on your needs. I wouldn't ask an artist to give you a photo every single day. They may not work on your doll every single day. I think maybe once a week might be reasonable or every other week, especially if there's a milestone. Maybe they've got all the layers of paint on now and they're going to send you that before it's assembled. Maybe they're going to send you different parts to show you certain details that they're painting. Maybe ask you if you like the veining on this or something like that. Depends. Again, everything is kind of subjective, but the hardest part really is just the wait. There's going to be periods of time where there's not much going to happen and you're going to be waiting and you've got maybe several $1,000s out there and you're just like, I hope this happens. I hope this happens because there's that anxiety from there. But I think that good artists are used to working with people like that, especially if they're reborning $1,000 babies or more. I think that there's a higher premium level of expectation when it comes to response to email. I do have to say one thing that did drive me a little nuts with my custom, and I understand from the artist's point of view why they work this way. I didn't particularly like this style of communication exclusively, and that was always having to do everything over email. There were some things that I struggled to write out exactly kind of what I was thinking, and I was wanting to brainstorm with them, and they said no. They would not take a phone call from me. They would not do FaceTime or anything like that. So it was all email. To their defense, I get it. If something was said or agreed upon in a video message and then later became disputed, there's not really written evidence of it. So keeping things over email makes things clear in that regard because there's written documentation of what was and what wasn't said. But I think there was a difference between brainstorming, wanting to chat about ideas, and this particular artist just had apparently their words to me where they had too much other things going on and that they no longer took phone calls from clients. I disagree with that. I would have liked to have had a direct phone conversation with her. I think that for the money that I was paying, I think a couple times through the process, a couple 20-minute phone calls would have been great. That's my only gripe. That was my negative. But it didn't take away from the beauty that the doll had when she was done. It was absolutely gorgeous, stunning. She clearly knew what she was doing. It was just that communication style I didn't always like. So, anyway, and yeah, so along with photos and things like that, how often should you contact the artist? Don't bombard them every day, especially with anything insignificant. Don't keep asking day after day, how's it coming? How's it coming? What's new? Are you getting close? Don't do that. That will irritate the daylights out of them, I'm sure. I think once a week, every other week, I think are good standards to do that. So let's talk about managing the excitement and the anxiety. As I hinted earlier, you've paid a lot of money for this custom because customs are typically more expensive from an artist. And so there's some anxiety, like I've got all this money out there, but I don't have anything right now to show for it. It should be coming, but it could be 3 to 6 months away. How do you manage that anxiety? I think it is just not letting yourself get overwhelmed. If you already have reborns, cuddle with them. Maybe start planning out how you're going to display them. When I got Sarah, I knew I needed to get some better stuff to display her. So I spent time researching and looking at that, putting my energy instead of just wanting her here, I put it into something positive, like what can I do to make space for her? What do I want to get any clothes? I know that she's going to come with a box opening and that's going to be great, but what are some other things that I can do? So that was really important for me to direct that energy and excitement and anxiety is just kind of focusing on the things that I could do right now, which were get a nice place for her to be displayed, make sure I had room, make sure I had some clothing items, make sure if there were any blankets I wanted or other supplies, especially like with Penny, for instance, she's my biggest girl. And so I needed 3 to 6 month clothing or even 6 to 9 month for some of her stuff, depending on the brand and all that. But yeah, so those are the things you can do while you're waiting to kind of temper that anxiety and also the excitement. So the next thing we're going to talk about, let's say that the artist has emailed you and said, yep, the baby is done, and I just want to confirm shipping arrangements with you. And here's the thing, I wouldn't plan on moving while you've got a custom. Because if it's going to be 6 months because of it's a very high-end doll and or that's the arrangement, but you're thinking, I might be moving to a new apartment or a new house in the spring. There are some artists, and they do this for a very good reason. They only will ship the doll to the address on the PayPal invoice. The reason being is that's the only address that if something happens to the doll in transport, remember, we're talking about $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 dolls here. And if something happens during shipping, if they're shipping it to the address on the invoice, then PayPal will reimburse the artist for the cost of the doll. That is important. So don't plan on moving if you are ordering a custom and it's going to be a long ways out. Make sure you're stable where you're at because many artists will not allow the shipping address to be changed. So that's really important. And that is less of them being a picky person and more to do with protecting the asset that they are creating. So just please keep that in mind that that's why they're doing that. But as far as reviewing the final baby, the important thing to remember here is photos may look slightly different, especially with silicones. There's always going to be maybe a tiny little bit of imperfection. And there's also going to be a slight thing where the artist may have a certain way that they do things. It's not going to be dramatic. It shouldn't be crazy. And the other reason that artists do it this way and they take pictures is because they've got to compare the way the baby looks now versus if there's any claimed shipping damage. Keep in mind, we talked about in the first video, there's usually no returns on customs or even most generally sold reborns that are artist made in general. Typically, there's no return, no refund policy. So those photos, when they're done, they matter. The artist should be taking them in natural lighting. They should not be photoshopped. They should not have any other touch-ups to them. They should try to portray the doll in as natural of a light as they can. This gives you the best view on your screen to inspect it. I would definitely recommend not just reviewing the pictures on your phone, but getting on a laptop, desktop where you can get a bigger monitor and really look over those details as best you can. The artist should be using a good quality camera for this. Most artists have good cameras. Most cell phones today even can take really good detailed shots if they're within the last few years. So those also should be good. An artist should never represent their dolls with AI imagery behind them. They should never put them in a scene where the doll could be in any way, shape, or form altered from how it's going to look to you. There's certain things like the hair. You can ask, can I see what the hair looks like dry if they've dampened it down in some of the photos? A good artist who does good rooting should be honest about that. If the hair is prone to being frizzy or doesn't lay down, they should show it looking that way. If you've specified that the hair should lay flat neatly and should be easily combed, then that's the expectation. And those are what you should be looking for in the photos. So those are things too that can be fixed, right? So hair can technically be rerouted if it had to be. It's a pain, I'm sure. I've never done it, but I know it's painstaking, but it is correctable. And some touch up and blush and polishing can be also minor changes can be maybe changed, but work with that specific artist because it depends on what you need. But those final photos are really important. So I hope that helped out there. Assuming you at the beginning you only put down the deposit. Now the doll is done. Now we got to talk about that final payment. This should be done after you've carefully reviewed the photos in detail, and you should also have asked all questions that you have about the doll. Anything that you want to confirm, the weight, the size, clothing, the length of the hair, anything that you want to confirm before you say, I'm happy with this doll and here's my final payment. You should be communicating that with the artist, especially for high-end dolls where there's thousands of dollars in play here. I think it's totally reasonable at this stage to be somewhat picky with the artist. You're not trying to be difficult, but you just want to make sure you're getting what you paid for within reason to the artist's own ability and their own artistic style. Because keep in mind, in your research, you should have found an artist that closely aligns to the way that you wanted your custom reborn doll to look. If the artist does something completely random that looks nothing like a lot of their previous work, that's a discussion. But I don't think that's what you're going to get in 99% of the cases. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But it's really important that you've checked every box that you have for making sure you're comfortable with the final product. In my case, I trusted them enough. I just said it's fine, and I paid up front anyway. So I had put the entire 1,875 up in January and got her in April. So that was how that worked for me. But it wasn't so much that I didn't want those extra things or they weren't willing to offer them. It was that I didn't want them because I felt it would ruin the unboxing experience. Okay, so you've got your final payment made. The artist says, okay, we're going to ship it off. This is the tracking number. And that's when the excitement really begins. And that is where we're going to pick up on the next installment of buying your first custom is what you should do when you first get the package in the mail. That's going to be on the next installment. Again, I'll have a whole playlist with all of this in a series order for you. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching. Remember, like, subscribe, comment below if you've purchased a custom, and I will see you guys in the next one. Remember, strength looks different here on Strong Hands, Reborn Dad. Bye-bye. God bless. Penny says bye too.